And hello and welcome back. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, and we are continuing down our security engineer pathway today. We are on room number, or I guess episode number 13, excuse me, which is going to be the network device hardening room, and it's a part of the network and system security module of the security engineer pathway of TryHackMe. And our outline is as such. So we got the intro, common threat and attack vectors, common hardening techniques, hardening virtual private networks, hardening routers, switches, and firewalls, hardening routers, switches, and firewalls, more techniques. So I guess part two. And then important tools for network monitoring, and of course, the conclusion. So that is the outline that we got today. If you are studying for your security engineer or security analyst, ethical hacker, pen test, any of those things, I do encourage you to like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out. We basically talk about security and ethical hacking, pen testing on this channel. That's really all we talk about. And it would be amazing to have you as a part of our community, and you really get a bunch of good things to help with your certification exams as well as your day-to-day job of a security professional. So without further ado, let's jump into the introduction of the room. All right, so the intro is as follows. Network devices are the building blocks and backbone of today's contemporary and large-scale networks and systems. The role of network devices is to ensure reliable and efficient transfer, filtering, and management of data across or within networks. Really just a really fancy way of saying you need network devices to actually set up a network, which is a local access network, an LAN, I'm sorry, local area network. I think that's what it's called. Local area network, LAN, wide area network, which is a WAN, and then you have something for specific, what is it called? Campuses, like a campus of a, the Google campus, for example, where they have a bunch of different buildings and locations, and that entire area, I think it's called a MAN, a MAN, which stands for a municipal area network. I'm not for sure, but I know that there is one specific term for that as well. And the WAN in general could also be considered that, and then the internet at large is also considered a WAN. So there's a lot of different devices. So you can have the layer 1 hubs, which aren't really used that much anymore, or repeaters, to layer 2 switches, layer 3 routers, load balancers, virtual private networks, VPNs, and intrusion prevention systems, which also fall as a part of your network and IDS. So there's an NIDS, which is the network intrusion detection system, and NIPS, which is a network intrusion protection or prevention system. So all of those things fall under network devices. And the learning objectives are basically for us to identify and mitigate any kind of security vulnerability that has to do with those devices, hardening, which means basically securing those configurations for those devices, and implementing security best practices to just make sure that it is perpetually secure. So by the end of this whole thing, we should be able to assess and strengthen a network device security posture of a company, enhance the network resilience, and effectively defend against common cyber threats. Some of the prerequisites are here. So you have the networking in general as a concept. So you need to understand basic networking, which would be the TCP/IP model, or just networking in general, network services, open systems interconnection, which is the OSI model, and then firewalls. And so let's see if I think I've done all of these. Yeah, I've done network services, enumerated NSMB. I think there's actually a video on this already. So there's the network services video, introductory to networking. I don't think I've done. Maybe I have done this actually. This seems like I did something for this recently. But this is just one of those things that if you just go look at the OSI model, what encapsulation means, what the TCP/IP model looks like, most network engineers work based on the OSI model, and we're going to be talking about that in a little bit anyways. But just understanding the OSI model, the layers of the OSI model, and the various networking tools as far as, you know, pinging something, or trace route, which is routing the number of hops that a specific packet takes to get from its originating IP address to its destination IP address. The whois lookup, the dig lookup, all of this information you could Google and get very, very quick and easy information about these things, because these are very, very basic. The most important thing out of this entire thing that you're going to need is the understanding of the OSI model. And this is the specific breakdown of it. So we have, it starts from layer 1, which is the physical layer. So it goes from the bottom up. So layer 1 is the physical layer, layer 7 is the application layer. So going from layer 1 all the way to the top, the acronym that helped me understand this is please do not throw sausage pizza away. So if you can remember that, please do not throw sausage pizza away, you'll at least have the first letter of these things, and then you can kind of remember what all of those things stand for. And it goes from the physical layer to the data link layer, network, transport, session, presentation, and application. And this is what most network engineers work off of. The TCP/IP model is a more current version of this thing, which instead of 7 layers, it just breaks it down to 4 layers. But everybody in network engineering and networking in general, most people go based on the OSI model, even though technically it's the older model and TCP/IP is the newer model. Most network engineers go based on this specific 7 steps instead of the condensed version of TCP/IP and its 4 steps. So that is just a very, very brief basic overview of these things. And from here, now we can actually jump into the first task, or I guess the first like main task, which is task 2, which is common threats and attack vectors. The difference between network devices and endpoint devices is as such. So the network devices essentially are the ones that provide the service to the network, and then the endpoint devices are the devices that use the service. If we were to just keep it super simple, the technical definition here, it'll give us some better understanding. So, you know, endpoint devices refer to any device that can generate or consume data on a network. So that's the laptop, the desktop, smartphones, tablets, printers, servers, IoT devices, any of those things are using the data that's being provided by the network devices. And then you have the network devices themselves, which is the routers, the modems, the switches, wireless access points, stuff like that. Those are all considered network devices. And those devices provide service to the network, and then the other devices consume the service of the network, and they generate data. So a laptop generates data. A network doesn't generate data. The network processes the data or transfers the data, transports the data. But the devices that generate the data are the laptops, the desktops, the phones, and anything else that can generate data, right? So printers technically generate data. Servers and tablets and all of those things generate data. So we can, if we looked at it from a kind of like a basic flow chart type of a graph environment, you have the function, the endpoint device, and then the network device, right? So the function, or I guess we can say the feature, my bad. So the feature, the endpoint device, and the network device. So the feature would be a function, and the endpoint devices used to access and consume network resources, and the network devices used to manage and control the resources on the network. Traffic, sources and designations of the network traffic, or sources and destinations of the network traffic. So the endpoints are the sources and the destinations of that traffic, and then the network devices actually forward that traffic. They route the traffic and control that traffic. The configurations of endpoint devices are very simple configurations. Network devices have complex configurations that require a lot of specialized knowledge. There's certifications that you can get just for Cisco devices for networking, and that's called the CCNA. And then it goes up from that. So there's like several certifications just for Cisco devices. And so, you know, that's a whole world all in itself, and it requires more specialized knowledge. Then you have the examples. So you have endpoint devices could be any of these things: PCs, laptops, printers, scanners, IoT, smart TVs, any of that stuff. And network devices would be the routers, the switches, the firewalls, load balancers, gateways, and several other things. So common threats and attack vectors for the network device side network devices are actually getting attacked more so now than any other time in history, honestly. Today's ICT, information and communication technology networks, they've transferred the world into a global village. Basically, everybody's connected to everything. And so, on the other hand, it's given rise to multifarious, I like that word, multifarious malicious activities by cyber attackers. And various network devices are the backbone of the modern information and communication technology, ICT networks. So, to ensure CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and availability in our networks and systems, we have to implement security hardening measures to these devices. And some of the goals of hardening include protecting from unauthorized access, attacks and exploits, enforcement of access policies, prevention of data theft, and a lot of other things, including the network just needs to be up all the time. So it needs to actually be available. You don't want to lose service. Imagine if Amazon Web Services, AWS, imagine if Amazon Web Services lost internet service in one of their warehouses or in several of their warehouses, and that crashed. That would mean that probably hundreds of thousands of websites, if not millions of websites, are also going to crash because their servers crashed. So this is very important. So understanding how important these things actually are in the global landscape of information is very, very important for us. And that's kind of where security professionals come in, right? So unauthorized access would be one threat. And the name implies, right? Somebody gets unauthorized access or control of a device, and then they do something to the network or get access to the entire network. The attack vector would be a password attack, so brute force, dictionary, exploit known vulnerabilities like remote code execution. Then you have social engineering and phishing attacks to trick network administrators into disclosing sensitive data, such as their usernames and passwords, so that they can actually do a password attack or get into the system. So that's one threat vector, which is the unauthorized access. Then there's the denial of service. So if something crashes, so disruption of critical devices to make them unavailable to real users. If going back to our Amazon example, if the Amazon Web Services warehouses of all of these giant web servers, if those things crash, that's denial of service, and people who actually need to use those things can no longer access them. So that's called a denial of service. So flooding devices with fake requests, probably not going to work with Amazon because they're so gigantic and they have load balancers and a lot of other things that will prevent that from happening. A lot of redundancies, meaning duplicate warehouses with duplicate servers, that if something were to crash one specific server, it'll just transfer service to another server and it'll keep running. So that is a little bit tough to do against a company like Amazon. Exploiting vulnerabilities in the logical or resource handling or manipulating network packets. Maybe those might be a little bit more practical, but again, against a company like Amazon, they are so secure. So that's also why people love using them. So it's like it makes it a little bit difficult to do something like that. So, but that is very much indeed a possibility. You can do a DOS attack against a small company and their web servers and their infrastructure. So that is actually a feasible attack vector. And then you have man in the middle, which is basically getting in the middle of the flow of traffic, intercepting the flow of traffic so that you can capture the information between them, and from there do a variety of different things, either stealing the information or manipulating the requests that are being made. And so this could be address resolution protocol spoofing, DNS, domain name service spoofing, rogue access points, and a bunch of other ways that you can also do man-in-the-middle attacks. Then you have privilege escalation. So gaining access to a lower level user and then escalating your privileges to get access to more sensitive information, weak passwords or the same passwords for user and admin accounts, exploiting vulnerabilities, misconfigurations. There's a lot of stuff. We've done a lot of videos on privilege escalation. So this is literally just a small fraction of the things that you can do to escalate your privileges. And then bandwidth theft and hot linking, which is linking a bandwidth intensive resource, which is basically an image or a video as an example, from an external website to the original website without permission. And it causes increased traffic to the original website, which means you're stealing their bandwidth, their processing power. Scraping large volumes of data, that could be one thing. DOS attacks is another thing. Malware attacks is another thing. Crypto mining is one of those things that you can steal their bandwidth so that you can use their processing power to mine cryptocurrency for yourself. That's one of the big ones. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do. So some of the questions that apply to this are: the device that is used to control and manage network resources is called what? That would be a network device. And a threat vector that includes disruption of critical devices and services to make them unavailable to genuine users is called a denial of service. And we are done with this particular task. So that was it for our common threat and attack vectors. So let's look at common hardening techniques or common securing techniques. There are general techniques that can be applied to pretty much anything for securing the device or the software or anything like that. So you have updating and patching. Updating means stay current with the most recent version of the thing. Patching means find out what a released vulnerability is or what a recent discovered vulnerability is and patch that vulnerability. Then you have disabling unnecessary services and ports. And so unnecessary services typically applies to the host itself, the client, or the computer, the phone, whatever. If there's a service that you're not using, disable it so that it's not part of the surface, the attack surface. In network devices, it's typically ports that you have to disable if you're not using them. So disabling those ports are really important. So you have physical ports and virtual ports. You can have virtual private networks or virtual LANs. So a switch, has a bunch of different ports in the back of it, and one port out of that switch could come out and go connect to a router or wireless router, and that singular port that comes out and connects to that one wireless router creates a small little LAN, and everything that connects to that one particular LAN or that one particular router and becomes that LAN. And then typically on the back of a switch there's dozens of ports, and some of them are not used. So if the ones that aren't used are still active, they haven't been blocked, then that's a part of the attack surface and somebody could take advantage of that. The principle of least privilege, we talked about this in one of our previous videos recently, which basically means that restrict users and processes to the bare minimum privileges that would be needed to do the job that it needs to do and nothing more than that. Monitoring logs is one of the constant things that a cyber analyst ends up doing, a SOC analyst, security analyst. That's basically your job, is to just constantly monitor logs. Thankfully, you don't have to do them yourself. There's things like IDS and IPS systems. There's things like SIEMs, security information and event managers, things like that allow you to monitor them, and they help, they monitor for you and they bring up events of interest for you to go address. Regular backups, kind of the very easy concept to understand. If anything happens and shit hits the fan, you want to have a recent backup that you can go back to just in case you've either lost your data or in case you're being held at ransom and they won't release your information unless you give them the money, and so you need to go back and use one of your recent backups to reactivate services, stuff like that. So enforcing strong passwords, again, one of the big ones. Things like have a capital letter and a lowercase letter as well as a number and a special character. Things like, have more than 12 characters in your password. Don't reuse old passwords. There's a lot of different things that you can enforce as far as your passwords themselves are concerned. And then your password policy could be, every 30 days or every 45 days, you need to change your password to just make sure that it's constantly rotating so that you don't have to worry about people. If somebody finds it, they don't take advantage of it. And then MFA, multi-factor authentication, is a bunch of different things. So it could be sending a text message to your phone. It could be sending a code to your email. It could be a thumbprint or a face scan or a key card or even a USB drive that has a key on it that counts as your physical key. So there's a lot of different things that you can use for multi-factor authentication these days that can make it helpful to secure or harden your network devices. The importance of secure protocols is another big deal. So Telnet, we did something earlier in this pathway for security engineering where we were attacking the weak protocols, and Telnet is a very weak protocol, and it was previously used for making remote connections to devices, and it's weak because everything is transferred through clear text. So if you submit your username and password on Telnet, it can be somebody could just sniff that traffic, and from there they get your username and password, and they don't have to do any decryption or anything because it's all just being passed through the port or the protocol using clear text. But then there's a secure version of that process, which is SSH, secure shell, which does pretty much the same thing that Telnet does, except now the whole conversation is encrypted and nobody can see anything through clear text, and they would have to go through a series of steps to try to decrypt the information that's going through secure shell. Same thing for HTTPS versus HTTP. So HTTP is the hypertext transfer protocol, I want to say, but it's basically the protocol that's used to access a web browser and send information via the internet, access information via the internet. HTTPS is the secure version of that encrypts everything. And then there's SSL and TLS, which is applied to HTTP to make it secure, and then IPsec and a bunch of other things. We can learn more about those things inside of this room. Let's see which room they're referring to. It is the Network Security Protocols room, which I have not gone through, so you can definitely expect a video on this somewhere in the future. But it's just important to use secure protocols to set up your network and to use your network, and don't use insecure ports and insecure protocols. It's basic. It seems like common sense, but most people don't even know, and most people aren't even aware. So it's one of those things that you just got to make sure that you take care of. Then remove or block insecure protocols. So very, very similar to the last one, right? So, remove Telnet. Right here, it's listed as an insecure protocol. Remove Telnet or block Telnet port from being used so that it's not even an option for somebody to use it to get into your system and then escalate privileges or get other data from you. So remove or block insecure protocols. Very, very simple to understand, but a lot of people don't do it. So that's another one of those things that you just want to make sure that you do. And then you have implementation of monitoring and logging controls. So we have syslog, which is a Windows protocol, and it's the standardized transfer of log messages with the purpose of storing and analyzing log messages to a central server. Then you have SNMP, the simple network mapper protocol, I want to say. It traps a notification sent by a network device to a management system when a predefined event occurs. Then you have NetFlow, and then there's a NetFlow analyzer tool, which is a protocol that's used to collect and analyze network traffic data for monitoring and security analysis. Then you have packet captures, which can be done using something like Wireshark or TCP dump or a bunch of other tools as well. That, again, it's a monitoring and logging control. And they haven't mentioned it, but there's SIMs and IDS systems and IPS systems and all those things as well. So the question here is, suppose you are configuring a router. Which of the following could be considered an insecure protocol? So IPsec has kind of sec in it, so we can say that's secure. SSH stands for Secure Shell. HTTPS stands for HTTP Secure. So the one that we have right here is File Transfer Protocol, which is an insecure protocol. And then the protocol for sending log messages to a centralized server for storage and analysis is called what? And let's see, I'm just going to take a guess here, see if it's Telnet. It's not Telnet. So the protocol for sending log messages to a centralized server for storage and analysis. Let's see what that is. Oh, it's literally right here. I can't believe I didn't even think about that. So syslog. Syslog is that protocol. Very good. And just like that, we got our common hardening techniques. So let's jump into hardening virtual private networks. All right, for this one, we had to start a virtual machine right here, and it's for the VPN, the virtual private network. And so hardening a VPN is what we're going to have to deal with here. So VPNs are now needed in the age of remote work and online communication to protect sensitive data and preserve privacy. Hardening VPNs is crucial to ensure that the VPN itself it's protected against cyber attacks, and it doesn't it serves its purpose basically. It entails adopting additional security measures such as multi-factor authentication and encryption techniques to make it more challenging for hackers to access the network. By taking these extra precautions, businesses can better safeguard their data and defend cyber attacks, etc. So that's what the job of the VPN is. So the VPN connects the computer to the intranet. Let's say somebody's trying to use the intranet through a VPN, and the hacker wants to get a man-in-the-middle attack, and they can't because the VPN is protecting the connection between these two entities. So it's very important. So we're going to cover the hardening of a VPN server by focusing on secure authentication, strong encryption, and proper updating. Then we'll see what else we can find later on. So connecting to the machine I've already done by clicking Start Machine. It's going to in a split view. It's not visible. The VM is not visible. Use the blue show split. Okay, whatever. That's fine. It is visible, as we can see the little extra pan on the pan on the side. The extra column on the side, let's just call it that. Standard hardening practices. So OpenVPN is one of the things that TryHackMe uses. And so to be able to configure OpenVPN to work for you, you have to download a configuration file, a config file, and then you typically don't have to do any kind of modifying to it. But if you want to, you can, and then you would end up securing your overall connection. So the system admin must understand that the file's content, must understand the file's content and edit it per best security practices. So what we're going to end up doing is go find the server config log, which is located at this directory, and then open the terminal and load it by doing sudo nano. And you should understand what that means. I'm not going to go into the explanations of that because that's very, very basic Linux command line terminology. So we're going to use nano as a root user to open that file. And then once you've made the changes, you do Control O to save it, press Enter, Control X to exit. Again, very, very basic things. And then sudo systemctl restart, and then the service that we want to do so that we can restart the OpenVPN service. And then moving forward, the following are some of the significant hardening practices for a VPN server. Use a strong encryption algorithm. So anything like a AES 128 versus MD5, for example. MD5 is pretty old and fairly weak compared to AES 128 or SHA 512 or something like that, SHA 512. There's just a lot of different encryption algorithms that are more secure than the older ones. So just having an understanding of what that is. The possible options for cipher includes AES, Blowfish, Camellia, and more. AES 128 CBC means that AES encryption algorithm with a 128-bit in cipher block chaining mode, as shown below. So this is what this looks like right here. And then cipher options can be oh no, this is the comment right here. So this is the original comment that they ran. This is what the contents of it are going to look like. And you see that they used AES 128. Then keep the VPN gateway software up to date. So just make sure that it's patched and upgraded and updated regularly. Then you want to implement strong authentication. So strong authentication mechanisms such as combination of TLS and a secure hashing algorithm. We can use auth to specify the exact algorithm that we want to use. Then you have other options like SHA-1, 128, 256, 512, and MD5. And as I mentioned, SHA-512 is more secure than MD5, so you kind of want to use the most secure thing. And then SHA-512 is more secure than SHA-256, which is more secure than 128, etc. You get the idea. Then you can do the same thing. So you go into the configuration file, and then you just say auth SHA-256 versus over here where they did cipher AES 128. That's actually, so this is it right here. So they already have SHA auth 256 right here. So this is part of their encryption or authentication that they're talking about. Change the default settings and the usernames and passwords that are unique so that you don't have to worry about them being in a big dictionary attack. Enable perfect forward secrecy, PFS. In OpenVPN generates unique session keys for each session to strengthen the security of it. Because of this, even if a hacker successfully obtained the session key, they could not use it to decode more sessions. For each session, PFS generates a new set of encryption keys, which makes the old one obsolete. So it's much more challenging for them to spoof the VPN connection and steal sensitive data. We can use TLS crypt to be able to enable that PFS, and it requires a key that can generate using the command that can be generated using the command sudo openvpn generate key secret, so on and so forth, and it should be placed in the same directory as on the server. So choosing the appropriate cipher and authentication like AES 256 and SHA 256 supports PFS if combined with TLS, and this is what it looks like here. So you have authorization, SHA 256, cipher, AES 256, and then you have TLS crypt and the key, and then TLS minimum version to make sure that you have at least the most secure version. And then we have dedicated users for the VPN service. So just limit access by creating dedicated users and don't create any other users, or don't leave it open, so on and so forth. And of course, this is just kind of the surface level stuff. There's a lot of other stuff that you can do based on what the enterprise or the organization requires. But by default, providing restricted access to the users enables a limited attack surface so that you are not vulnerable in a bunch of different areas. So question number 1, it says update the config file to use cipher AES 126. What is the flag value linked with the cipher directive? So let's go ahead and update the cipher. So let's open this up and go to our file location to make it a little bit easier here. All right, and there's that. And there is that. So we have our server config file right here. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to nano into it, and then we want to update our cipher to use AES 128. So let's do sudo nano and server.conf. There it is. And there we go. So there's our information. And we want to change the cipher to be AES 128 CBC. So let's go in here and try to find that. So we change that, and here's the flag value already for us right here. So this is the cipher flag, and there's a flag up here too. That's for the authentication. So there's that. And then we're gonna update that to be SHA-512. So let me just take this flag real quick and copy that and update that over here. And so let's just change this to be SHA-512. There we go. And then as per the config file, what is the port number for the OpenVPN server? So what is the port number for that? Let's try to find that. All right, so we have at the very top here, we have 1194 as our port number. So let's make sure that that's it. Yep, that is it. And just like that, we finished it. So now we're going to do Control O, and it's going to say, do you want to write to this? And we press enter, which is yes. And then Control X, and it closes it out. And we have updated our VPN file for OpenVPN. So now we can move into hardening routers, switches, and firewalls. Routers and switches, they have to be hardened for network infrastructure to be secure and reliable. Every network needs routers and switches, often the first line of defense against potential security risks. By hardening those things, we can lower the possibility of unauthorized access, data breaches, network service availability can be ensured, and a bunch of other things. And improve network performance, increased resilience against cyber attacks, and regulatory compliance are just a few advantages for securing routers and switches. And without enough hardening, they are very susceptible to various attacks, including DOS, denial of service, and network profiling. Profiling meaning they can enumerate our network and try to find out what kind of services we have, or what kind of gear we have, so on and so forth. So we studied how to harden a VPN using the command line interface in our previous task. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the web interface to learn different methods for hardening a router, and we'll be using a router that has OpenWRT installed, which is free and open source Linux based operating system for embedded devices. And we know that a router configuration varies from product to product. However, a few standard techniques can be applied to protect from potential attacks. So we're going to go to this specific address in our web browser and use this username and password to log in. And then from there, we're going to run the rest of the exercise here. All right, so we have that loaded now and setting it up. So here we go. It says, while setting up any network device, it's necessary to fill in all the relevant details like the host name, the time zone, logging, and stuff like that. It makes sure that conducting incident handling is a little bit easier. Logging must be enabled to log all the events with the default alert level of debug, and then time zone and synchronization can be accurate, can set accuracy or can set accurately to properly correlate events with the time of the occurrence of it. So we can do this in the system tab right here to just make sure that we have all of those things set. And that's what the screenshot of that looked like. Then we're going to change the default credentials, which I believe is in the system administration tab. That can be done. And let's see if I need to do any of these things. So use the password to update the password of the router to TryHackMe123. So we can definitely do that under the authentication tab. So let's go over here and let's go to administration and then enter a new password, which is going to be TryHackMe123. So we're just going to update our password real quick. Cool, we saved the password, so that's good. So what is default SSH port configured on OpenWrt? I'm just going to guess that it's 22 because it is the default port for port 22 for our SSH. and SSH in general, really. And so that would be enable secure network protocol. So we can do that under administration and SSH access, which is the next tab right here. And it'll show us some information about that, which includes our default port, for example, as well as if I click on this, we can see this a little bit better. We have interface, and then the port 22, obviously, password authentication that's required, and allow root logins with that password, and then you can even assign a gateway port, and that's still loading a little bit, so we can look at that later. And then disable unnecessary scripts if you have certain scripts that are running. And so here we go. We have our default ports set to 22 right here, which is all good as well. And so if we go to system and startup, we can see the scripts that are available that we can potentially turn off. So it says go through the general settings option under the system tab in the attached VM. The administrator has left a special message in the notes section. So general settings of our system tab in the notes section. So let's see what we can find here. There we go, that's our note. So THM system 101 is the note that was left in our notes. And it says, what's the default system log buffer size for the OpenWRT router? And that is probably not going to be under scripts. So this, I actually have to kind of click around and try to find what the buffer size is. So let's try to find that. And that was under logging, under the general tab for system. So that is 64 is our default buffer size. And it says, what is the start priority for the script UHTTPD? So now we actually do have to go to scripts and try to find that. And I think that was under startup. Yeah, so we're going to go under startup, and we're going to try to look at the UHTTPD script and see what the start priority for that thing is. And there we go, it's right here, UHTTPD, and then it's 50 for the start priority for that. And there we go, we got all our information for OpenWrt, OpenWRT, OpenW router. That's basically the system that we were using to configure our router for this task. So that was pretty cool. It was fun to do. Doesn't require a command line interface, which is very nice, and it's actually pretty helpful. But I think it's also really important for you to learn how to do stuff like this through the command line, because a lot of companies require for you to understand command line for setting up information on routers and switches and stuff like that. So that was it for hardening routers, switches, and firewalls part 1. And now we're going to go into part 2, which is still going to use the OpenWrt tool, and we're going to be looking at a different tab, which is the network tab. So let's go into that. And network devices allow us to create specific rules, which is accept or deny network traffic. So if you have, for example, data of users connected with our network devices being exfiltrated to a C2 server, we can create a rule to block all the traffic with that specific IP for that C2 server. And you can do that through the network firewall traffic rules. So if I go to network and then I go to firewall, then it'll show me the traffic rules that I can implement, and if there's anything that exists already or if it doesn't. So that could be one thing, and maybe we have a question for that. So it says, what is the name of the rule that accepts ICMP traffic from the source zone WAN and destination zone as this device? So that's probably going to be in our firewall rule, and source zone WAN, and what's the name of the rule? So that's what we need to see, and this is under traffic rules. So let's see what that is. So there is a couple of rules that have the protocol of ICMP, and it says from the source zone WAN, and the destination zone is going to be this device. So if we have protocol ICMP from WAN to this device, and that would be allow ping, and then if we go down a little bit more, we have another one that's IPv6 from WAN to this device, which is allow ICMPv6 input. So that could be one. And then you have another one from WAN, but that goes to any zone. And then that's pretty much it, I think, for all of the rules. Yeah, so I think it's the allow ping that is from ICMP, from the WAN to this device. There we go. And so what is the name of the rule? That forwards data coming from the WAN to port 9001, or from WAN port 9001 to LAN port 9002. From WAN to LAN port 9002. And so let's see if we can find that. And I have actually gotten ahead of myself. So there, there's a section to monitor traffic, which is for our status tab that's at the top right here. And then you can just go to traffic for that real-time graph. So status real-time graph, and then we can look at the real-time traffic that's taking place. So that's really interesting. And then you have port forwarding, which might be the location that we're going to be able to find our port answer, the question for our ports. And so if I go to port forwards in this case, and it says, a firewall port forwarding capability enables inbound traffic from the internet or other sources to be routed to a particular device or service on the internet network. The firewall can send incoming traffic to the appropriate device or service on the internal network by establishing port forwarding rules while blocking any other incoming traffic that does not comply with those rules. And this feature helps host applications that need outside access, granting remote control of internal devices. Port forwarding should be used carefully because it can expose internal devices and services to potential security issues if improperly secured and configured. Threat actors could add new lines here for creating connections to external command and control servers, and we can configure it here. So this is where we are, and this is what we're looking at, and this is actually it right here. This is the rule. So it's called THM_port, and it goes from WAN to this device on port 9001, and it's going to forward it to LAN port 9002. So that is what is actually called, is THM port, and that is it. And so what is the version number for the available APK package? And that's what we're going to find under software. And then we have a specific tab right here for scheduled tasks that you can actually have a reboot set up. And this is a command line interface, as it looks like, that you can say this is the system cron tab that schedules tasks can be defined, and then reboot in this particular case. So it's important to monitor scheduled tasks to confirm that the original scheduled tasks are not modified by a threat actor, and we can add and remove those by going to the scheduled tasks. Over here, since we don't have a question that's relevant to that, I'm just going to stick with our screenshot here and move on to that. You can learn how to create cron jobs here, and this is for the Phoenix NAP website for that OpenWRT software for modifying and configuring your router. So that's the software that we're using right here, and it's powered by that wonderful company. So now we can go into the system software to try to find the version that we need for our specific question, our very last question here, that says what's the version number for the available APK package. So I need to go find that package, and let's see what the version number for that is going to be. And here it is, APK, and this is our version number. So we're going to copy that, and we're going to go over here and we're going to paste it, and there it is. And that was the last question for our part 2 of hardening routers, switches, and firewalls. And this actually, honestly, I like this. I like the fact that there's a GUI, like a web GUI for this software. So let's go into the last task here, which is important tools for network monitoring. Network monitoring tools are enablers for maintaining the security and performance of networks They use sophisticated algorithms and protocols to capture and analyze real-time network traffic. In addition, they enable network administrators to detect and troubleshoot problems such as bandwidth bottlenecks, network outages, security threats. Commonly used tools are Nagios. I actually had to learn about this when I was studying for my CYSA examination. So it's an open source software for monitoring systems, networks, and infrastructure. It provides real-time monitoring and alerting for various services and applications. SolarWinds, a really famous name, and it has a bunch of different uses. One of them is the Network Performance Monitor that provides real-time visibility into network performance. It includes network mapping, also known as heat mapping, automated network discovery, customizable dashboards. Actually, I think network mapping is very different from heat mapping. Heat mapping has to do with the strength of your devices and the signal that they're emitting. Network mapping is finding the various points in your network, so they're not the same. Automated network discovery, customizable dashboards, so on and so forth. SolarWinds is a really, really big deal. It's a very, very big deal. And they actually got hacked at one point, and that was like a big old scandal. But obviously they've patched it and they've recovered. But it's a big name. You're going to hear that a lot when you're going into cybersecurity. So big companies use them because it's a big freaking enterprise software. And if they have a budget, they're going to use some of the best softwares, which includes SolarWinds. And then you have PRTG, all-in-one network monitoring that provides comprehensive performance and availability monitoring. It includes real-time traffic analysis, custom dashboards, and alerts. And then you have Zabbix, a powerful open source network monitoring tool that provides real-time performance and availability monitoring. Includes features such as customizable dashboards, network mapping, alerting. So these are just a few. There's a lot. There's a lot of network tools, and it would be to your benefit to go ahead and learn about them, especially the big name ones like SolarWinds and Nagios and stuff like that. And open source software is going to be used in a lot of companies. So it's not like companies who have budgets want to throw money at things. If you can find a really good software that is open source, that'll get the job done, they will most likely go for it. So that is not bad at all. And our network monitoring tools capable of detecting bandwidth bottlenecks? And the answer to that is yes. So we have our task, and that is done. We just finished our room. That's because I had already clicked on the complete session for the conclusion, so I'm not going to jump into the conclusion, but it's really important. I think this is like one of those things that you're going to deal with network security that will be completely separate from system security, and understanding the difference of those things is very important, especially as a security engineer, right? Because that's what we're studying for right now, is the job of a security engineer. And you're going to run across tasks and requirements at jobs and just a bunch of stuff that are absolutely crucial for you to understand what network infrastructure looks like and what network appliances are and how you can secure those things. So that is it for our network device hardening room on TryHackMe. If you learned anything in this video, or if you're studying for your security engineer, security analyst, pentest plus, ethical hacker, any of those things, I do encourage you to like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell and join our community. All we talk about here is security engineering and ethical hacking and pen testing, cybersecurity analysis. And I think all of that information and everything that we talk about is directly applicable to you in your examinations and certifications and day-to-day jobs when you go into the world of cybersecurity. So there's already a completed playlist for the SOC Level 1 content that is all TryHackMe, including labs and examples and engineering tasks, as well as challenges and a lot of real life scenarios that we went through, a lot of different tools that we used. Includes endpoint detection and response. It includes digital forensics and incident handling. So there's a lot of stuff that already is on the channel, and we're making our way. We're making progress with our security engineer path. So that's going to be another one of those things that will be available to you. And it's just, I think you'll get a lot out of joining our community. And honestly, personally, I would love to see you in the comment section and to just see you in our community. It would be amazing to have you be a part of this very growing world that we got going on here. So hopefully you find value from it, and hopefully you'll actually join us. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite network and system attacker slash protector. This was our network device hardening room. And love, peace, and chicken grease. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you. I will see you in the next room later.